Hello, everyone. Everybody wants to be a star. People out there say, I want to be a star or make me a star. We have that there are pop stars, rock stars, and even movie stars. We have the Hollywood Walk of Stars. We even make wishes upon shooting of stars. But as we know, most stars out there are just stinky hot balls of gas. And of course, the occult world is attached to the stars. Well, we're going to talk about a specific star in chapter 9 of the book of Revelation. And we're going to take a extra long look at it and maybe we'll get to some conclusions. And just to let you know, this is a Hebrew revelation that John wrote that comes to us by Cochin, India. That's right, Cochin, India. It was not exposed to the Spanish Inquisition, and this thing has survived. Of course, it's copy of a copy of a copy, but we have examined it to be a first century source from Hebrew. So we're excited to do this walkthrough, and this is Project Truth Ministries. I am Brian Scott Williams, and we are broadcasting the truth to all those who have eyes to see and ears to hear. And as always, we have with us our wonderful, wonderful, wonderful Hebrew grammarian, Janice Baca. Janice, would you like to say hello to our audience?
Yes, of course. Shalom, everyone. It is so exciting to be here today. And I tell you, we have some pretty exciting things going on. And chapter 9, we've got the fifth and the sixth shofar that are blowing. We have four angels coming out of the Euphrates, and it's going to be exciting in this chapter. But I want to bring to your attention, there's some other exciting things going on. I will be visiting at the Way Remnant YouTube channel, and I will be sharing some more of the mysteries that are hidden in the Cochin Hebrew New Testament. Not just Revelation, I'm telling you, it is stocked full of these exciting things. And so this is going to be something that will blow your mind. It will be showing on Monday, 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Eastern at the Way Remnant with Jeff and Miranda Brannon. And you will not want to pass this up. And of course, I have been really inundated with so many questions about the Hebrew grammar and show me, teach me, help me. And because of that, I will be doing some teachings on my personal YouTube channel at Janice F. Baca _translator. And you don't want to miss those either, because I think it's time that everyone, not just Brian and I, but everyone do their own personal analysis of these manuscripts. And we want to share this knowledge with you, and that we come together as a body of Messiah and study and do the analysis together. Really exciting things going on, and I just can't wait to share this with you. And I know that it will completely, absolutely encourage each and every one of you. So yeah, we got some great things going on, Brian.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're not going to miss that opportunity. Please go subscribe at Janice F. Baca's YouTube channel. Also, subscribe at The Way Remnant. We have so much to teach you, so much to learn. We're really excited. We're still finding stuff all the time. And the stuff we're finding completely blows your mind. Trust me. I mean, if you made it this far in our study, your mind's already been blown many, many times. And we have some more mind blowing things in this chapter. We're going to be talking about a star, and that star is going to be at the very first verse. So can't wait to get into that. So before we jump into that, I want to ask you, please subscribe, like, share, leave comments, and we don't ask for any money or anything like that. All we ask is that you please share this out, spread this to as many people as possible, because we are wanting this to get in as many hands as possible. And you can even send it to somebody you don't like and you want to rile them up. Maybe ruffle the feathers, you're all in for the Greek. That'll be fun too. Well, with that being said, let's go ahead to the reading of chapter 9. And now the reading for chapter 9. The fifth messenger blew, and I saw a star fall upon the earth from the heavens, and he was given the key to the deep. He opened the deep, and smoke went out from the deep, like smoke from a large furnace. The sun and the air darkened from the smoke of the deep. From the smoke came upon the earth, and they were given authority to annihilate, to destroy. They were told, "Do not damage the plants or the green grass of the field, nor any tree. Injure only the children of mankind who do not have the seal of Jehovah in their foreheads." They, the frogs/locusts, were not given authority to kill them, but only to grieve them for 5 months. And their grief was like the pain when scorpions bite. In those days, you would be wiser to die, but find it not. The locusts are like the horses poised for battle. Upon their heads were crowns of gold, their appearance like the appearance of mankind, their hair like the hair of woman, and their teeth like the teeth of a lion, and their rears were like the tails of a swarm. They were given authority to grieve the children of mankind for 5 months. Their king was a messenger from the deep. His name in the Hebrew language, Abaddon, and in the Greek language, Apollyon. Something like a cloud passed, and behold, the second is coming as clouds. All right, this is chapter 9. This is the image of chapter 9 in the Cochin Revelation. And I want to give a shout out to Kurt Sutton for supplying these photos to us. Without him, we couldn't have done this. Thank you so much, Kurt. You are the man. All right, now let's go on to verse 1, in which it says, "The fifth messenger blew, and I saw a star fall upon the earth from the heavens, and he was given the key to the deep." Now, Janice, I noticed something about our version compared to the King James. The King James has bottomless pit.
Here's what's interesting, Brian, is that it does mean deep and or pit or abyss, but I think that the King James added that bottomless to it to give a more descriptive indication of how it just never ends. Now, abyss and bottomless pit, or I mean, in this case, in the Hebrew, it does mean deep or abyss. So it looks like King James decided to add a little bit more explanation to it. What do you
Yeah.
think?
Yeah, well, if you take that for, if you're like thinking with your Western mindset and you're thinking quantitative and you're thinking very specific, then you would have to assume if it's bottomless, then there's no bottom. It means it's a pit that goes on forever, which that doesn't make sense, you know. That's kind of an impossible thing. So it just being a deep pit is how you should read bottomless, and that would be qualitative thinking, maybe an Eastern mindset. So that's also interesting. No big
It is.
change there, but just a different
Nope.
way of viewing the English. Now, there's something that makes it seem similar to what we just read in chapter 8. Go to chapter 8, verse 10. We have a star that burned and fell from the heavens upon the earth, and it poisoned the water. But here, it's similar, but it's not the same star. This is the second star falling. And I would like to get into what this star is and who this star might be, because there is a possible theory that I'd like to explore to suggest that this star is actually Hasatan, the one and only Satan, the one that is leading the 1/3 of the angels that fell from earth or have fallen metaphorically. So let me take you to to a couple of places in the Bible. Let's first start out with Isaiah 14, in which it's discussing this morning star. Now, there's some things in this verse that I'd like to point out as I'm reading it. So I'll go ahead and read it all the way through, and we'll start with verse 12 in chapter 14 of Isaiah. And I'm reading from the New King James. How are you fallen from heaven, O Lucifer? Take note that they say Lucifer, son of the morning. How are you cut down to the ground, you who weaken the nations? For you have said in your heart, I will ascend into heaven. Notice he went into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will also sit on the mount of the congregation. You can assume that would be the temple. On the furthest side of the north, I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. Notice this verse. Yet you shall be brought down to Sheol, to the lowest depths of the pit. Notice pit there. So this is talking about Hasatan. Now let's go back to the first word, Lucifer, there. This is the way that the English translates it. This kind of comes from the Latin, which means light bearer, but this is not really the best way to translate this word. The best way to translate this word is straight from the Hebrew, and what does the Hebrew say? Hello, is a word that means morning star. And you might be thinking, well, what's a morning star? Well, there's a couple ways to translate it. It could be the star that is last left in the sky in the morning. That could be the morning star, sure. But you could also translate it as the morning star that comes up, being the day star, that being the sun. And so it could explain why we have so many sun god worshiping around the world. This might be all be coming from the same source. They're worshiping the sun god, Satan. Now, I want to talk briefly about this word, hello. This word goes back to ancient Akkadian, and it's Eliel. From there, it goes back to Sumerian, Enlil. Enlil, you can look up Enlil. He was one of the ancient gods out there. And Enlil in Sumer was the god of evil. Enlil is everywhere in the ancient world. His name means the god of the wind. And you can reference the prince of the power of the air, thinking about Satan being the prince of the air. And it's interesting that the Hebrew word for idol is Eliel. And so you have the same sound coming through. And also, one of Enlil's major titles was the Great Dragon. So you can see that Satan and this Hebrew word has been used forever, essentially forever, from the beginning. And it's just evil. Let's continue on. I want you to notice some more about this verses. When we got to verse 15, it says, "Yet you shall be brought down to Sheol," that being the ground or the grave. And the next verse is, "To the lowest depths of the pit." Notice that's future tense. That's not past tense. So that verse is saying that Satan's going to be brought down to the earth into a pit. And it's not past tense. So that's interesting.
Very interesting.
In Revelation chapter 20, we have Satan being described as the accuser of the brethren. And so the concept there is that still has access to God, and he is still able to accuse us. Say, look, we're doing bad. You don't need to save these people. They're wicked. Look, they're falling for all my tricks. And he is still there. He still hasn't been cast down. Let's go to Job. Let's look at Job chapter 1 verse 12 real quick. And Jehovah said to Satan, "Behold, all that he has is in your power, only you do not lay a hand on his person." So Satan went out from the presence of Jehovah. So Satan was in the presence of Jehovah. when Satan was talking to God about Job. So Satan still had access to the throne room. And we know that Satan was one of the cherubim. So he hasn't lost his access to the heavenly. Even though he's running back and forth and doing terrible things, he's also still subject unto God, and God is still in control. God is using him like a tool. I know this might be kind of a foreign concept for a lot of Christians out there. Yeah.
Here's what's
Go ahead.
interesting. Did you know that Satan means adversary?
Mm-hmm.
And we have several times in the New Testament as satanim. So there's adversaries, and it's spoken of in plural form in a few places in the Cochin New Testament. So is this the same Satan, or that came after Job, or is it an adversary? And I don't know. I just wanted to draw your attention to that because Satan means adversary, and it could be that it's a different adversary. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's certainly true. I know that in Isaiah, this is certainly a problem with the King James version. It mentions Satan 19 times in the English. However, the original Hebrew, you could go count it, it mentions Hasatan 35 times. So there has been some changing of the text to kind of massage it into just one Satan when God's using many Satans. There might be a singular Satan, and that's probably what we're dealing with here in this verse with the star, but it's a little more complex than what we've been led to believe. All right, let's flip over to Ezekiel 28. There's some things I want to point out. Ezekiel 28 and verse 11, and it says, "Moreover, the word of Jehovah came to me, saying, Son of man, take up a lamentation for the king of Tyre, and say to him, Thus saith Jehovah Elohim." And this chapter is going to be about the king of Tyre, but the king of Tyre has been possessed, and the address here is switching to talking about Satan. And it goes on to say, "You are the seal of perfection, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. You were in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone was on your covering, the sardius, the topaz, and the diamond, beryl, onyx, and jasper, sapphire, turquoise, and emerald, with gold, the workmanship of your timbrels and pipes was prepared for you on the day you were created. You were anointed cherub who covers. I established you. You were on the holy mountain of God. You walked back and forth in the midst of the fiery stones. You were perfect in your ways from the day you were created till iniquity was found in you. By abundance of your trading, you became filled with violence within, and you sinned. Therefore I cast you as profane thing out of the mountain of God, and I destroyed you, O covering cherub, from the midst of the fiery stones. Your heart was lifted up because of your beauty. You corrupted your wisdom for the sake of your splendor. I cast you to the ground. I lay you before kings, that they might gaze at you. You defiled your sanctuaries by the multitude of your iniquities, by your iniquities of your trading. Therefore I brought fire from your midst. It devoured you, and I turned you to ashes upon the earth. In the sight of all who saw you, all who knew you among the peoples were astonished at you. You have become horror and shall be no more forever. This no more forever shows you that this is a future thing, that God is going to cast him down and burn him up, and he's going to be gone forever. And keep in mind, this star that's going to fall from heaven is going to crash into a pit. Now, I want to keep going with this. Before let's get on a little off trail here. So I could just mention this briefly. In Ezekiel chapter 10, there are 4 cherubim mentioned. And many people will interpret it, especially the occult groups, they interpret it that there's a 5th cherubim missing, that all the animals are represented except for the reptiles and the fish, and that Satan, Hasatan, is the representative for the serpents and the fish. He is the 5th cherubim according to them. I don't believe this. I'm just telling you what they believe. And that's why they use a 5-pointed star to represent the 5th cherubim, and they turn it upside down, being, worshiping Satan. Upside down also represents the upside down man, being death to mankind. But also another thing that they use in the occult world is they use lightning bolts. And they'll use lightning bolts to represent Satan from the description in Luke, which we will go to, that Satan fell from heaven and it was like a lightning crashing down on the ground. Let me read that in the English. And I understand that Janice might have some very important message or information on this particular verse.
I do, Brian. I was going to translate that out of the Cochin Luke, and so that we would have it for this broadcast. Well, lo and behold, it is missing. And evidently, the Cochin scribe was looking at a manuscript that probably had damage, and there were missing verses. So there were a number of missing verses in the Cochin Luke. And for that reason, this is where I'm finding that the Cochin is more reliable, is that he left it like that. He left what he had in there in his copy, and he didn't add another manuscript. In other words, he didn't do a compilation, which is something that I'm not a fan of, right? So he left it as is. But however, I went to look at the Manchester Gaster 1616, and interestingly enough, the Manchester Gaster 1616, which is a copy of the Cochin and a copy from early 1900s, he actually has those verses, and it seems to be coming from a different manuscript. And that's the reason why I consider the Manchester Gaster 1616 as not a reliable source at all. When I see changes like he does, and willy-nilly changes, he will change it to match the Greek. He will add verses. He will make changes that are just crazy. And that makes that manuscript unreliable. So I found that fascinating. If anything, this is points for the Cochin because he had integrity and he didn't make this a compilation.
Yeah, and I'll go ahead and read the English version of this verse. And Janice, could you read the Gaster one? And the English says in Luke chapter 10, verse 18, and it
Oh.
says, "And he said to them, I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven." Notice that it says past tense, that he saw him fall. I'm interested to hear what the Gaster might have. Janice, could you share that with us?
Yeah, sure. What's interesting is a Gaster says, and he said to them, you will see Satans, plural, falling like lightning. I don't know where he managed to get this manuscript, but interesting, he did make it a plural for Satans.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm just shocked that we have a change of tense, that it's not past tense now, it's future tense, which kind of
Mm-hmm.
fits in with what our theory is that Satan's going to be the one that falls to the earth on this verse about this star. And that he hasn't fell yet. He just has limited power right now, and he still has access to the throne. And that once we get to chapter 9 and the 5th messenger blows, then Satan will fall into this giant pit, which terrible things will come out of it. We'll see. All right. So to continue on and to put a book in on this particular concept that Satan is the one that falls to the earth and that he is the star, let's look at Revelation chapter 20, verse 1 through 3. And I'll read it to you in the New King James, in which it says, Then I saw an angel, that being a messenger, coming down from heaven, having the key to the bottomless pit, the deep, and a great chain in his hand. He laid hold of the dragon, that serpent of old, who is the devil and Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years, and cast him into the bottomless pit, and shut him up, and set a seal on him, so that he should not deceive the nations no more till the 1,000 years were finished. But after these things, he must be released for a little while. So, the way I see it is this is a good possibility that Satan is the one that falls to the earth. He crashes. There's this giant pit that forms. Smoke and fire comes out of this pit, and some terrible things come out, and they are attacking the earth. And then you have all these events happen. And then this final angel comes down, and or messenger comes down and captures Satan and throws him in that pit, chains him up, and closes this pit that we're reading about in chapter 9. So that's the theory. I think it's pretty good. What do you think, Janice?
I think so too. Very interesting information, Brian. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely. So shall we move on to verse 2 finally?
Let's do that.
All right. Chapter 9, verse 2 says, He opened the deep, and the smoke went out from the deep like smoke from a large furnace. The sun and the air darkened from the smoke of the deep. So notice it says deep again. We're not dealing with this bottomless pit business from the English.
No, it does say deep.
Mhm.
That's interesting.
Also take note that the sun is darkened by the smoke of the pit. That means there is some kind of giant cloud of smoke coming from this pit that makes the sun darken again. We've dealt with some darkenings of the sun in previous chapters, but this is a bad haze.
Definitely a bad haze going on. Something's not good.
Yeah. And I mean, when you compare this to the English and the Aramaic, I mean, this verse is pretty close. I don't see a lot of differences.
Yeah, I don't either.
All right, let's go ahead and move on to verse 3. Oh, it's going to get a little crazy on this one. Janice, you ready for this one?
I think I am ready for this one, Brian.
All right, verse 3. From the smoke came frogs? Question mark crossed out. All right, we'll get back to that one. Janice is going to help us with this one. And it goes on to say, upon the earth, and they were given authority to destroy. Janice, what's this business about frogs? And why is it crossed out?
Well, notice in the image, it is crossed out. You'll see the image there. Actually, go to the next page so you can see the images broken down in the boxes there. See the number one, he had frogs. And so then he crossed it out. And then there was someone who, don't know, added in the margin. And it does not appear to be the same scribe. So frogs was crossed out, and the Zephyrim. So Brian, it's interesting that it has frogs crossed out, and then Rava actually in the marginal note. And we don't know if this is actually the original scribe or it was somebody else, because the handwriting in the margin does look like someone else. It does not look like the scribe who wrote the Cochin Revelation, the Scroll of Mysteries. Now, Rava, meaning great, growing greater, swelling, it could be referring to locust. It doesn't necessarily mean locust, but it could be like an imagery of this swelling locust. But all of this is questionable as to, is this really frogs or is this really locusts? But I think in the second edition that I will just make this clearer that this is a growing, swelling, or great something. And is it frogs or is it locusts? I don't know. We'll see in the next few verses as to what it could be.
All right. I like to think future mindedly, like technology is going to keep progressing, but my mind goes to some sort of drone that's flying around injecting people. Maybe, DNA, nanotechs type stuff. I don't know, but these things are flying around or they're ambushing people. This is kind of interesting. And of course, you know that John is trying to describe this the way that he can with the limited amount of words and his time and his culture. He's seeing future things and it's kind of like this, kind of like that. This is probably just blowing his mind to be able to see a vision of the future and end times. I mean, this guy's probably going to be very shaken, especially with all the death and destruction that's he's being allowed to see.
Exactly, Brian. And he probably has no other way to describe it but other than his current knowledge base, of course. And how do you describe things of the future that are in high-tech world as we live in? And that may be of a difficulty. So the only thing you have to compare it to are animals and creatures and natural beings and so forth when you're looking at an unnatural world.
Absolutely. Well said. So I want to then point out, let's do some comparison here. We have scorpions in the Aramaic. We have scorpions in the King James and the Scriptures 2009. There you can see scorpions on there. And in our Cochin Hebrew Revelation, we do not have scorpions. And also at the end of ours, we have the word destroy. They were given
That's right.
authority to destroy, whereas the English and the Aramaic just says that they were given power or authority. So no mention of destroy. That's a unique word that we should know. They're going out to destroy things and they're powerful on the earth.
So, Brian, we have something pretty interesting. There is a lot of information about what's called a manuscript of the Freiburg HS 314, that there are claims that this is the most authentic of all of the New Testaments. And well, I'd like to check to see what it says in Revelation 9, verse 3, because the Freiburg I have seen historically has been a complete, almost identical copy of the Greek. What do you think? You want to look at that?
Yeah, absolutely. That is something that we're going to work in from here on with our study of the Hebrew Revelation. Is we're going to be checking this manuscript along with our Aramaic versions to show that this Freiburg is coming from the Greek. We've already spent a lot of time, Janice and I, analyzing this manuscript. And so we just want to spread the knowledge of this manuscript so people can understand this one has got support, the Cochin support from the Hebrew source, and that these other ones don't pass the test. So let's go ahead and try to test this one just to see if it has scorpions and if it has destroy. And if it doesn't have destroy, that is a problem. And if it has scorpions, that's also a problem, showing that it doesn't match our Hebrew Cochin. All right, this is the Freiburg here. And it says, from the
Oh,
smoke of the
there it
pit,
is.
locusts upon the earth, and to them was given dominion as the scorpions were given dominion on the earth. We have the scorpions there, Janice.
Oh my goodness. And you know what? It looks almost identical to the Greek there. See how it's compared to the King James.
Mhm.
And again, that's what I've seen before. So I had a suspicion that it would be continuing on in the Revelation like that, but that's good to see those things.
Absolutely. And notice that there is no word for destroy at the end of that sentence. So that makes our Hebrew Cochin a unique marker that doesn't match the Aramaic, doesn't match the Greek or the English King James, which comes from the Greek, and it doesn't match the Freiburg, is uniquely standing alone, which is what we want to see. The Freiburg came from Germany. All right, let's move on to verse 4, which it says, they were told, do not damage the plants or the green grass of the field, nor any tree. Injure only the children of mankind who do not have the seal of Jehovah in their foreheads. Now, Janice, let's start off with it says they at the beginning of this sentence. Who is the they here?
Well, that is a good question. It says, when you look at the interlinear, and of course, Hebrew is read from right to left. The very first row, you'll see the very first box to your right, and it does say they were told. Who's the they? They were told, and it was told to them. Who's the them?
Is it going to be those flying locust frogs that we don't know who they are?
The frogs slash locusts.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
The
froggy locusts. I don't know.
the ambushing drones
The
that look like
ambushing drones.
frog locusts. Yeah. All right. And so another thing to notice here is it says the children of mankind. And that is a very unique way of phrasing it because we should be thinking about when Yeshua was talking, he separated people. Well, you're children of Satan, you're sons of Satan versus the sons of God. You are, the offspring of this group rather than the offspring of the righteous. And that's kind of what we're looking at right here. The children of mankind are the worldly people, the people who do not have the seal. And you can see it there. It says who do not have the seal of Jehovah in their foreheads. And knowing that it's in is could set up to the whole idea that, what you have in your mind or in your forehead represents your mind and your thinking, and then on your right arm or hand represents your actions and what you're doing. So there's a little bit of symbolic gestures there, but it's probably on their foreheads as well. But notice we have Yehovah there. Janice, look at Yehovah.
I love seeing my father's name there. And it does say Me Yehovah or Me Hashem. Well, so the Hey Gershayim, the Hey with the two slash marks over the top, you'll see that in the third row at the bottom, and it's the last box. That Hey with the two slash marks over it means Hashem. And of course, that's the rabbinical way of saying Yehovah, because according sometime around the 120 year, they stopped using the name of Jehovah, but of course the Talmudim, the disciples, used the name of Jehovah, and I love seeing my father's name there. So it does say Jehovah, but I'm just curious as to what the Freiburg says, because if the Freiburg says Jehovah, well, okay, then it may be from the Hebrew possibly, or if it says Elohim, then that would mean it was from the Greek, right?
Yeah, and then it would be matching the Aramaic as well. You
That's
can
true.
see the Aramaic has Elohim here as Aloha. So let's look at the Freiburg. What does Freiburg say? And it says seal of Elohim in
There
their
you go.
foreheads.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Greek.
We're going to keep finding these markers and we're going to show you that it is not passing the test when it's compared to the Cochin. And that's because the Cochin has first century Hebrew markers. It has Aramaisms. It just keeps passing the test. The sentences are tighter, more clean, less explanations, less inserts. And when it comes time to use God's name, it steps up and uses it.
That's right. Absolutely.
All right, now verse 5. It says, they, that being the frogs slash locusts, were not given authority to kill them, but only to grieve them for 5 months. And their grief was like the pain when scorpions bite. Wow, we have
Mm,
biting scorpions.
we do have biting scorpions, and we don't have a stinging one or a striking one. Interesting. They bite.
Mhm.
Although that may be a Texas scorpion. I'm totally convinced of that.
You would know by experience, right, Janice?
I would. I would. I've been stung way too many times. But
Mhm.
I'm curious, Brian, what does a Freiburg say? Does it say a scorpion's bite or sting or strike?
All right, let's check that out. Oh, there you go. It
No,
says
there you go.
strikes man.
Okay.
Scorpion
Well,
when it strikes.
that is looking like the Greek.
It's an
Interesting.
agreement with the Aramaic and the Greek. Oh,
Absolutely.
all right. Hey, do you want to talk about the Hebrew word there that we know that it's bite?
Brian, we can confirm here that it is noshek. It does mean bite. It means one who bites or a biter. And so we've definitely, we have a biting scorpion. And
Ouch.
I don't know, it sure sounds terrible to me.
Yeah. I want to be sealed.
I'd rather be sealed than
I don't
get
want to
bit.
get bit. Yeah. All right. Let's move on to verse 6. Now, this one I think is going to be one of our big markers here. It says, in those days, you would be wiser to die, but not to find it. Now,
Wow.
yeah.
Look at that difference.
So let's flip over to the King James. I want to read this one out to everybody. And you'll see that this one is a lot more wordier and it doesn't have not find it at the end of the sentence. It's like we have a lot extra added. So it says, and in those days shall men seek death and shall not find it, and shall desire to die, and death shall flee from them. So in our Hebrew Cochin, we don't have flee from them.
Interesting. No, we
Right.
don't have fleeing from them. We don't have running from them. We don't have any of that.
Desire.
Let's see. No, look at the Murdoch Aramaic. It says flying from them. Interesting.
And it has
It's wordy.
desire. No,
And it does desire.
it has desire. It has die right there, that
Mm-hmm.
they will long to die, and it has death will flee from them. So the markers that we want to see is the negative markers, being from the Greek and Aramaic, is death, die, and death again. In our Hebrew Cochin, we just have that they would be wiser to die. We don't have these other words here. So let's flip over to the Freiburg and just see if that thing is lining up with the Aramaic and the Greek, because we have it also
Absolutely.
in King James, those three markers too. So here it is. It says, in those days shall men seek death. There's our first one. And shall not find it, and shall yearn, like the desire, to die. There's our number two. And death shall flee from there. There's our number three.
Oh,
Three
there you
for
go.
three.
Oh, and it is almost identical to the King James. Very much from the Greek.
Yep, absolutely. So where are you going to get this, people? Us going through all these manuscripts and bouncing back and forth and cross-checking, doing real text criticism. Nobody else is doing this online. How
No,
awesome is Project Truth Ministries?
absolutely.
All right. Verse 7 says, the locusts are like the horses poised for battle. Upon their heads were crowns of gold, their appearance like the appearance of mankind.
Well, now we have locusts, right?
Mm-hmm.
So take notice on the first row, first block, you'll see that Arvaim, actually it can be an active participle PL form, meaning it's really intense and it's a big deal. And this is a verb form that makes it something pretty potent. And it could mean either they're liars in wait or they're ambushers, or it could also be a noun meaning locust. So now locusts show up when a few verses earlier, we weren't sure if they were talking about frogs or locusts, the growing, swelling locust, because of it meaning great something. But here it's probably is a locust. However, could the participle form of this be describing in the way that they will be attacking? I don't know. Interesting thought.
Very interesting. All right, let's go on to verse 8, which it says, their hair like the hair of women, and their teeth like the teeth of a lion. And, I zoomed in on this lion verse because anybody who knows me knows I'm crazy about lions. I love lions. I judge all my movies based on how many lions are in it, and I'll give them 10 out of 10 on lions or one lion. Most movies will have a lion at the beginning of the movie, the famous one that roars, but I love lions, and so I noticed something about this verse. We have one singular lion in this verse, whereas the English and the Aramaic says a plural lions at the end of this verse.
Wow, interesting. And I bet you like the Lion King, right,
Oh
Brian?
yeah. Oh yeah, I
Oh,
like the
okay.
Lion King, absolutely. And to keep this lion train going, I love this verse here. It's in Proverbs 28, verse 1 says, the wicked flee when no man pursueth, but the righteous are as bold as a lion. So,
Yes,
we all need to be little lions out there.
absolutely. But I'm curious, so Brian, what does the Freiburg say? Is it plural or is it singular?
Let's check it out. And
Ah,
Janice, it says
oh,
plural. Can you confirm that
it,
Hebrew word there?
yep, it does. It says oriot, and it is plural. That oat at the end does make it plural. So we do have a multitude or some number of lions, more than one,
Mm.
matches a Greek.
When I read this, it's describing this killing thing that's flying around, and it's describing. Well, it had hair like woman's hair, and it had teeth. Their teeth was like a lion. Making it singular makes sense because you got two big fangs, you got teeth, and then of course we'll see things are coming out of this mouth. So to me, a singular lion makes sense that this thing is firing fire out of. That's just if you ask me.
Interesting. Does sound like that's an option, right?
Hmm. All right, let's move on to verse 9, and in which it states, "Oh wait,
What? What?
where's 9? What happened to verse 9?"
Did it fly away?
Kind of looks like it. Janice, can you help us out? What's going on with no verse 9?
So it doesn't exist in the Cochin, and and usually what you see, Brian, are verses like this where it doesn't exist in the Cochin, but it does exist in the Greek. Usually it's a descriptive type verse and adding explanation to something. And it certainly seems to be so in this case. Now there are cases, and we can't rule this out, but could it be that the scribe missed a line? Could it be that he didn't see it? I don't know. We don't know what really happened because we have to keep in mind that these are handwritten manuscripts, and it's a tedious task, and we don't know what happened. But now we've got a number of these that happen in the Cochin. But interestingly enough, Brian, every single time there are types of descriptive verses that explains things away, and we've got that case here.
Yeah, usually adding extra information. Now,
Hmm.
Janice, I want to propose another possibility.
Okay.
Could it be that a lion ate the bottom of the page and this verse disappeared and they didn't have
Either
access
that
to
or
it?
it could be, or either one of our scorpions here in Texas ate it. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So it could be that. But you know what? Here's another question. What does a Freiburg have? Does it have it or is it there?
Let's check it out. Let's
Okay.
see. All right. So we have verse 9 right here, and it's about
Wow.
breastplates. It says body armor and as armor of iron. There you go. It has the whole verse.
That is from the Greek. Absolutely. I was thinking it was going to be continually showing from the Greek. Interesting. I'm glad we're showing this though,
Yep.
Brian.
It is good to cover all our bases.
Absolutely.
All right, let's pop over to the Crawford Aramaic and see if it matches the Murdoch Aramaic that we have here on the page. And there you go.
Wow.
It's
There it
right
is.
there. All right.
Absolutely.
So again,
That
we have the Crawford Aramaic, we have the Murdoch
Murdoch.
Aramaic,
Hmm.
and we have the Freiburg all in agreement, along with the English and the Greek. And our Cochin stands alone without this
It
verse.
stands alone. Absolutely.
All right, let's move on to verse 10, which in the Cochin is verse 9, because remember, we're missing in the verse 9, in which it states, and their rears were like the tails of a swarm, and there were given authority to grieve the children of mankind for 5 months.
See, and we continue with this theme of the children of man or mankind, and this continues through the rest of this chapter as well. And I find that interesting. And you do not see that from the Greek or the Murdoch Aramaic as well. And it just says men. It just says men. And so interesting that we go with that. And that will be one of the things that stands out.
Absolutely. Now, I want to point out we again have the 5 months thing. That's kind of one of those anchor points. It's been repeated twice now, and it's in all the manuscripts. So there's this some kind of grieving for 5 months. And typically, when you get the number for five in the Bible, it's usually connected or associated with grace. So that's kind of interesting, that number five represents grace. And these people, they're technically not dying from these stings. They are being mourned, they're in pain, but they won't die. And so I guess there's some kind of grace going on here
Well, think about
underlying.
it, Brian. Yeah, think about it. So when you're getting grace, the grace and mercy is stopping the sin. And sometimes it takes a little bit of a few pops on the bottom from the Father to say, you're going to stop this. That is grace and mercy when you're suffering the pains and saying, the Father saying, stop this behavior, or you're going to suffer this eternally. This is exactly what we would consider as grace. This is your grace period. That's it. Dad's not going to take any more of this nonsense from you kids.
Mhm.
And that's exactly what I'm glad you keyed in on that. That is the grace.
Absolutely. And before we move on to the next verse, I just want to point out, if we go over to the King James, you will see that it says, and they had tails like unto scorpions, and there were stings in their tails. Now, if you look at the Aramaic, you see that it says their tails were like those of scorpions and stings. The Scriptures 2009 says the tails were like scorpion and stings. Well, ours doesn't have the stinging part. It just says they had tails of a swarm. And so again, we have the added scorpion in there. I wonder what the Freiburg has, if it has
Let's check it out.
scorpions. Lo and behold, there we
There
see
you go.
scorpions right there.
Mm,
Tails of scorpions and spurs in their tails.
there you go.
Our Cochin stands alone.
Again.
All right, let's move on to verse 10. That is 10 in the Cochin. That is verse 11 in the English. Now, this one is pretty exciting. This one says, their king was a messenger from the deep. His name in the Hebrew language, Abaddon, and in the Greek language, Apollyon.
Interesting. the scribe also added the diacritic marks, which are the marks of the vowel points. And he wanted to make sure that we knew exactly how to pronounce this in the Hebrew. And it is Apollyon, and it does mean destroyer. And what is interesting is that people need to realize when you see these diacritic marks or these vowel marks, we can call them that to make it easier to understand and remember, but the vowel marks were not created until the 5th to the 7th century CE. So this came later. And then when you see this, somebody added it later. And of course, the Freiburg is filled with these diacritic marks, and they have the marks of, you know, somebody's interpretation, and that's exactly what you're seeing is somebody's interpretation of this. So I can only assume that this scribe added it, perhaps somebody before him, who knows, but they wanted to make sure that we knew exactly how to pronounce Apollyon, the destroyer. So
Yeah, and that's interesting. You can also see within that name is Apollo. That is kind of how this word forms. And Apollo is the sun god, the Greek sun god. He's the one that ran the sun across the sky with his chariot. And you can link up Apollo to all the other sun gods around the world, kind of matching with what we were talking about before, that Satan used this system of sun god worship, which always ends in human sacrifice and child sacrifice. But you can see like a pair up here with this person who has came out of the deep, and now his name means the destroyer, and the root of it is the sun god Apollo. So that's kind of interesting.
yeah, very interesting.
Janice, can we briefly talk about why we're saying Hebrew and Greek language in this sentence? Some might suspect that this is an insert.
Brian, I don't think so. I personally believe that when John wrote these to the 7 assemblies, that they did speak several languages. I know for a fact that they spoke Hebrew and Aramaic and probably a little bit of Greek. Why wouldn't they explain it? Now, in this case, they're actually putting the diacritic marks, the vowel marks under Apollyon, the Greek word, to say, hey, this is what the Greek sounds like, since you guys aren't used to this word, maybe.
Mm.
But I do think that they did speak several languages, and I do think that Greek was a little bit, they which why not? Because then you would say, well, this is what it means in Greek for you who understand a little bit of some Greek, or maybe you understand a lot of Greek, and this is for you who understand the Hebrew, or maybe you that don't understand all of the Hebrew. Well, I don't know why it wouldn't be.
Yeah, that could be something you could go to as a proof text that, hey, John is probably writing this in Hebrew, because he starts off with saying his name in Hebrew is this. And also, if you're a Greek reader, it also is this in the Hebrew language. He wrote it Apollyon, so you can read it. And then, that, of course, that gets changed over to Greek. But that's interesting because even in the English, it says Hebrew tongue and Greek tongue, which tongue means language. That's what that means in Old English. But this could be a marker to suggest John's writing it in Hebrew, and it was always originally in Hebrew.
Absolutely.
Mhm. And to give you some references here, many people will think that this is the Antichrist that comes up out of the deep. And the verses that you can go to reference that would be Matthew 24, verses 5 through 51. And of course, Daniel chapter 11, verse 31, and chapter 12 in Daniel, verse 11. And this is all dealing with, the Antichrist comes and he stops the sacrifice after some time. All right, let's move on to our final verse for part 1. And this is going to be verse 12, and that's the Cochin 11, in which it says, something like a cloud passed, and behold, the second is coming as clouds. Now, I noticed some difference there, Janice. We don't
No
have
big
clouds
difference.
in
Hmm.
the English
We
or
don't have it
Aramaic.
there. Hmm. So these are going to be big markers for the coaching. Is it going to stand alone, or is it not? And so we do see that the scriptures does show that does not show the clouds. And of course, you have the Aramaic, one woe was past, and lo, there are yet two woes after them. But these woes in the Cochin are being described as a cloud. And then behold, the second is coming as clouds, and there's plural. Interesting. So we got a cloud, woe is a cloud, and then you've got a second woe as clouds that are coming. So the second woe that's coming is coming as multiple clouds, which is really fascinating.
Really fascinating. Now, shall we check the Aramaic Crawford to see if that there are any clouds mentioned?
Yeah, let's check them.
All right. Oh, look, and there you go. We have
There you go.
no clouds mentioned in the Crawford. Let's pop
Wow.
over and check the Freiburg to see if it's matching that as well. And there you
There you
go. There
go.
is no clouds mentioned in the Freiburg. It is completely in step with, even the English King James. It's pretty
Hmm.
amazing.
So it looks like it's a translation from the Greek. The Freiburg certainly is proving itself to be a translation from the Greek. And of course, the Murdoch and the Crawford are proving themselves to be more like the Greek as well. So, and the Cochin, which they claim at times, some have claimed that the Cochin was a translation from the Greek, and it just simply isn't possible. But fascinating stuff, Brian.
Yep. And to clarify here, Janice, can you tell us what this Hebrew word for clouds is right here?
So it's avim, and that is plural. You have the eem endings, the suffix, which is a noun, masculine plural. And of course, it's also a Second Temple word, meaning that it's just been used in the Second Temple writings of the scriptures. But it is avim, and it certainly means clouds. So we definitely have some plural clouds. Now remember the first one there on the first row, the second word, you have av, and that's a singular. And of course, it's as a cloud, and then you have the as the clouds or a clouds. And so surely do have clouds. Can't deny that one, Brian.
Well, there you go. I like to think these clouds are shaped like lions.
No, better lions and
Yeah.
scorpions.
Yep. Maybe the lion of the tribe of Judah coming
Oh
in a
yeah, there
cloud
you
shaped
go.
like a lion. That would be cool.
Absolutely.
All right. All right, ladies and gentlemen, was that not amazing? We covered the star, we covered the locust and or frogs, maybe. I don't know. And we finished off at the end with clouds. Maybe clouds shaped like lions. I don't know. I'm still throwing that out there. But we will pick up with part 2 of chapter 9, in which we will see the sixth trumpet. And we're really excited to share that with you. There's some really big bombshells in there. We have a lot of additions that really don't make sense. We're really excited to present that with you. And we're asking you to download this. Go to the description. That's where you'll find it. It's a link to academia.edu. You can download your very own digital version of this interlinear, and you can follow along with this, or you can speed ahead and go read the end. You could be like the mainstream Christians out there and flip to the back of the book and just read that if you want. Uh, but I recommend you going slow like us and help you walk you through the Cochin revelation. Really excited. So thank you. And we're also urging you to read your Bibles, people. And as always, God bless. Thank you. Take care.